Um, it's been a while since we last heard from him. Among the things that have informed Matt's perspectives are his BA in Black Studies and History, a master's in Urban Studies, a deep love for the city of Oakland, and more recently, we wasn't that long ago we were over Matt and Sarah's, Diane and I, with a small group of friends because we celebrated his second master's. He might want to say something about that. His sister is his number one fan, and he says it's mutual. So we'll wait till we hear from her to get verification on that. Matt is blind, and he has come to see the intersection of racism and ableism in a way that moves us to live a more engaged and restorative way. Matt often says that he walks by faith, not by sight. I can't remember, but I think maybe we have not heard from Matt as our presenter since he was single. I'm not sure. Maybe, no, I might be wrong. But not only are Matt and Sarah married, this is the week that she is due for their baby. In fact, when I gave this date to Matt, he said, "Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm on call." So everybody, uh, let's uh, let's give a big welcome. He can't see you wave your hands, but some kind of unmute for a second. Say welcome, Matt.
Yay, Matt! Matt, get it?
Welcome, baby.
Matt.
Wavy.
Matt.
Matt.
Woohoo!
Steady
Love
love.
you, brother. Love you.
Congrats on being a daddy soon.
Oops, you're back on mute,
Okay.
Matt.
Oh, sorry, you guys didn't get to hear all my excitement. I said, yeah, thank you, and don't tell the government. Um, yeah, anyways, inside joke, I guess. Um, let's see. Yeah, thanks. So excited to be here. Yeah, it's been a minute, but not too long. So I'm back. I'm back. Shout out to women. Today's Women's History Month. Like y'all are the backbone of this humanity and just ground us. Like we wouldn't. Yeah, it's y'all are just the queens, the real ones, holding it down. So reminding us of our humanity, grounding us. So thank you. Shout out to you on this day number one. May you get all the tributes that you deserve this month. Um, yeah, my sister is my number one fan, but I have yet to hear that, or I'm her number one fan, but I've yet to hear her say that. So, it's still out. So, yeah, thank you. That bio was, that was a throwback. That was from the original, I think one of the original times I spoke here. Um, so there's a scripture I want to use today, and I don't have it up for y'all, but I have it kind of just memorized. It's Romans 5:3. And Romans 5:3 says, "Rejoice in suffering, for suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance comes character, and character comes hope. And hope does not put us to shame, for the hope of the love of Jesus Christ is poured out upon us." And I want to reword that a little bit. Um, and I want to say, maintain joy in the midst of suffering. It's a little bit different. Maintain joy in the midst of suffering. For persevering will bring about character. And this character is the foundation of being enough. And that is the hope of Jesus Christ. So I reworded it a little bit to kind of us to get it, because this passage has been used as kind of, sometimes they call it a clobber passage, where it's like, oh, suffer, you be a martyr, go be like, but I think it's saying something a little bit different. So I've kind of had this as a life passage for a while. So I want to share that with you, and I want you to keep that in your mind today as we talk about Reverend Jesse Jackson. Yeah. The reason I'm here talking about Reverend Jesse Jackson is because I joined David in Chicago for the Parliament of World Religions. And I presented there and talked about disability, and we, walked around and checked out all the booths. And on the closing day, they had an event to honor the life of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And there wasn't much going on the final day, I'll tell you that. And so we were sitting there in this big old auditorium, probably for 5,000 people. And just like slowly but surely, we were there like an hour early. Slowly but surely, it started to fill up and fill up. And we're like, do we move closer? Like, is this going to fill up? And it just started filling and filling and filling. And then you heard a voice come on, this big voice. And this video starts playing. And it says, I am somebody. And then it breaks in to these actions of Jesse Jackson marching and meeting with the people, organizing rallies, being elections, and all these things, and just a very powerful video, just the I am somebody. So I'm here to talk today about the I am somebody. And my goal at the end is for you to see the connections between the phrase I am somebody and our political power and the intersection, shout out to women, feminism, the personal is political. Yeah, we're gonna Jesse Jackson, he had his eyes set on that because he believed that if we had personal power, personal fortitude, then we can have political power and political fortitude. So um and so he yeah, talked a lot about this perseverance in this character. And so um and it impacted me because it reminded me I am somebody. And I got brought into the movement in a deeper way at that moment when I was in that auditorium with those thousands of people. And at this point, Reverend Jesse Jackson had Parkinson's, had kind of a little bit more of a mumbled speech, but he still showed up in his power with his family by his side and gave a speech to his greatest ability that day and received the honor. And family and the people just celebrated him and all of his life's work. So many people came up there and spoke so highly of him and the impact that he's made in Chicago and in America and around the world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today and the way that it continued to impact me. So, um, and so I knew of Jesse Jackson. I was in my Black Studies work, in my history work, and in my activism. So I knew what Reverend Jackson had done, and the perspective I had of Reverend Jackson was one that was kind of like just kind of middle of the road. Wasn't really like highly looked up to. Was just kind of like he's like, yeah, it wasn't somebody that was like, oh, down, he's down, he's a radical, that kind of thing. And I think I've learned over the years a little bit more about like why that was, and I'm going to share that. But I'm not going to I'm going to share those things not in a way of putting him down, but in a way that I've come to respect him in a greater way because of those things. In the early 70s, he was at Memphis when King was shot. He was downstairs, and so he did a lot of work starting in 1965 with the SCLC, and later the Poor People's Campaign, worked with Ralph Abernathy, and so he was deeply a part of that movement, but and went to Chicago's Theological Seminary, and got his MDiv and all these things, and so he had these kind of conservative ways. He was very pro-abortion. Oh, sorry, pro-life. Got that a little mixed up. And some very, he was kind of he was actually pro-war on drugs and wanted to get black Republicans into the mix because he, was very focused on economic power, and he really focused on, being the center of the leadership. He kind of had a very a big presence. He was a taller guy, and he had a big booming presence, and we kind of wanted to be the center of things, and that wasn't really highly looked upon. But he believed in there was a power that he carried, and wanted to make sure that was known. He wanted to make sure his presence was felt, and so he had these things, and maybe these things weren't quite fully aligned with where the movement was or where the movement was going. And he reflected on that, I think. I don't know this for sure. I haven't read his biography book yet. But I have done a fair amount of research in that he grew and he pushed himself forward, and he started something called Operation Push, which is People United for Serving Humanity. That's what PUSH stands for. In his early days, he took the work of building economic power through that's what the Poor People's Campaign was working on, economic power or gaining political power through economic empowerment. And they had something called Operation Breadbasket. And this Operation Breadbasket was where we get our original DEI, where the boycott was continued. In 1964 and 1965, when the Civil Rights Acts were passed, there was not it was a lot of backlash. Businesses were like, "Nope, we're not doing that. We're not allowing you here." And so people had to stand for that. And if people had to stand up for their rights to be able to get acceptance places, and so and to get incorporated into things. And so economic power was the way for political power because like, nope, we're not going to shop there. And so the boycotts were powerful. You didn't go to this shopping center. You didn't go to that restaurant. And so they lost their political power if they didn't allow equal treatment and support of the Voting Rights Act and all those different kinds of things. And so, and the housing discrimination and schooling discrimination. So there was so many things that the economic power really emphasized. And so, and the breadbasket was saying, hey, if we could all come together, just like in the scriptures, if we could all come together in the breadbasket, then we can feed thousands. And so really worked on that we call now a cooperative model, where our money together has pooled together has a much greater power. And so and that economic power moved the political power of all these businesses and organizations. And so this really grounded himself in working with people poor and impacted, disenfranchised, and people that they got caught up in a lawsuit, and he gave them money, and he gave them a path to education. He gave them medical support, money to go get care in a hospital, and so people supporting humanity was not only just a platform, but it was a place where he could share his message. And on the weekends, he'd share his weekly message, and he'd call out directly the politicians in Chicago, the politicians in DC, the politicians around the world. And he'd say, no, this cannot be done. You are not standing for the people. And people would line up for that. And that was because it wasn't, quote, a church, but he was still seen as Reverend Jesse Jackson. And Operation Push, the headquarters, people would come there and gather and know that the people power was unified there. And that was a place where we could organize, our place where we can pool our stuff, to pool each other together, and the people power was felt. And he wasn't so much loved in his hometown, because they say, what's the scripture about they don't love you where your home is, so you got to shake the dust off your feet and continue to go other places. And so that's not exactly it, but y'all get what I'm saying. Because he spoke the truth to the politicians there, and so he didn't get as much like institutional love, but people on the ground really respected him. He built his power and his radio presence and his local organizing power there. And so in this breadbasket push, he really understood on the ground what these people were going through. And he famously ran for president in 1984, got about 13% of the vote, I believe, and then famously ran again in 1988. But the 88 one was really informed by his 1984 one. And he announced famously his bid for the presidency during the LGBT rights march in New York. And that was a big thing. That was a big thing. He'd already, it wasn't just like this grandstanding. He'd already been in alliance with them and working with them. And not only was this, it was that was the setting the foundation of where he was going to push the bounds of political power. And not only did this was kind of an announcement, but he didn't make his delegation for the Democratic, but he did speak at the Democratic convention. And in that was the first time that gay was mentioned in a Democratic or Republican convention. And so he pushed the bounds of who was included. And he talked about immigrants. He talked about the disabled. He talked about the poor. He talked about those that still were being excluded because of their experience in the prison system, or disenfranchised because they were incarcerated. Any particular one of those. And this is in the 80s, before we talked about mass incarceration or things like that. And he acknowledged during that time, he said that drugs were really impacting the community, And he asked for a war on drugs, and he didn't really understand at that moment what he was really asking for. And he later repented, or not repented, but recanted that, and and saw the effects of that. And he was very outspoken about his the police violence and the mass incarceration of Black and brown bodies in the United States. And so 1984 was very pivotal for him as far as his platform and what he come to say and do in 1984. But before I get to 1988 and the push for that one, I want to take a step back and understand that his presence, his bigness, was felt internationally as well too, and that's something I did not know about him. Not famously, he was called in to um, negotiate for a plane that was shot down over. It was in Lebanon, but it was over Syrian battlefields at the time in the late 80s, and he got release of the soldiers, and so he's really appreciated for that. But there was other times, actually in the early 80s, he was brought in for another release of a soldier situation, and he actually negotiated with Saddam Hussein in the early 90s for release of other Americans that were in during the first Gulf War. So, and there was other ones of working with other countries around the world to all the way from Southeast Asia in Myanmar and Malaysia, all the way to Central America and Nicaragua, and so just there's many experiences where his international presence, he was seen as this person that was outspoken, and he used that to his power. He saw where his position was, and he utilized it for good. And so that's something I'm like, this people kind of like, oh, he had this ego, this arrogance, but I think he had this groundedness with the people where he could see what happened. And one thing I'll mention later, what really stuck out to about that is after the 1988, he failed to get the delegation by the Democratic Party, but he got 33% of the vote that year, which was pretty close. That was second place. And one thing that he really focused on, he was so on the ground with the people, so connected, really lifting up them in that movement. He really he went to the places that were uncomfortable. He started his bid for the presidency that year in Brighton, Alabama, or something. It was a very deep South state where the KKK had a very strong presence in, but it also had a very strong poor Black presence. And he lifted them up, and he said, and he reminded them they are somebody, and he reminded them of his past of growing up from a single mom and being adopted and changing his name and growing up being poor, believing that he was somebody, and that it got him to his place where he realized he had a voice. He could, and it was through sports. Sports was a big part for him, and understanding that he got his scholarship to play football. He actually got invited to play Major League Baseball before college, and he declined that. He's like, no, I'm gonna go do this and get the full ride because he valued the education. He knew the education was the way forward. And in that process, he realized the ways that he was being used as his presence as a quarterback, and but he focused in on his sociology degree and understood the value of being with the people, and participated in a protest at his college where the students were not allowed into the whites only library, and so and then joined with the SCLC and Martin Luther King's group later on after that. But all this to say is that in 1988, he had this foundation of being with the people and lifting up the impacted people. So here's a man that had this big presence about him, but he also knew what it meant to be with the people. And in that process, he was able to change the rules of the Democratic Convention. Before it was an all or nothing, and he was able to get more delegations because he was able to change the rules, because of his big presence and his ability to take a stand on something, and the power of the voice that he spoke with, because he spoke with the power of the people and the people behind him. and he changed the rules so it's not all or nothing, but it's sections of each community can go to delegations. I'm not sure how long that rule stands because I think we're back to the all or nothing, but he was able to change the rules for that time period. Um, let's see. And after 1988, that was a very momentous thing because in that speech is where he did the famous "I am somebody." He reminded all the people that he'd spoken to in all of his tours, rallies, that he reminded them that they are somebody. He had everybody saying, "I am somebody." He went on Sesame Street telling the kids that I am somebody. He had all the kids in the Middle East saying, "I am somebody," and the kids in Malaysia saying, "I am somebody," and the kids in South Africa saying, "I am somebody." Because he stood with the ending of apartheid in South Africa, and he walked with Nelson Mandela as he was exiting the prison that he was held in Franschhoek, and he stood with Palestinians before, like in the 80s and 90s, when he saw these people. He saw where the movement was going to, the ethnic state that was already being set up, and the rules and codes that were so similar to the Jim Crow that he was familiar with in Greenville, South Carolina. Um, Lions. And so in this, after the 1988, it was so important that this "I am somebody" popped up in his power almost expounded after that moment because he may not have gotten the presidency, but he got the transformation. He was there to transform the world. The presidency was just a side project. And so his "I am somebody" reminding people that they had political power, that they were, when you're rooted and you're somebody, then you can stand for something. And so in that process, they all were able to join together and remind themselves of their power, and that they could get back to that economic empowerment aspect and that breadbasket that he worked on so early on through that "I am somebody," and that, hey, I may be down, I may be suffering, I may have not been, this system may have knocked me down, but I'm going to persevere and I'm going to do this with joy, and this is going to reward me. And keep hope alive, because that character that comes from this persevering, it is worth it. And when we stand together in our power, then we have power. When he says "I am somebody," we are somebody. And I want to note here too that when he's saying "I am somebody," he's talking about a lineage of people that have said "I am somebody." I want to give a call back to 1848, where the Seneca Falls women's suffrage movement started, and Sojourner Truth in 1951 or 1851 wrote her famous letter and speech back to the women's convention, the women's suffragist movement, and said, "Don't I belong? Aren't I a woman, a black woman that is here? Don't I belong?" And I see this moment as a pivotal moment in American history, because at this moment we are saying who is human and who is not human. And when we say "I am somebody," we are saying "I am human." And Sojourner Truth said, "I am somebody." And Ida B. Wells continued on saying, "I am somebody," when she fought for the lives and the advocacy, the ending of lynching, and through her journalism and equal rights, and the first person to stand for reparations vocally in her journalism. And the continuation of Bayard Rustin in the civil rights movement saying, "I am somebody. I'm somebody that can create this march on Washington." And Audre Lorde saying, "I am somebody. I'm somebody whose voice matters. Aren't I a black woman?" Bell Hooks would say. And so continuing on that legacy, and Jesse Jackson walking in that saying, "I am somebody," and knowing that that is the foundation of our political power. And in that push, in that part of pushing back against the empire. I learned this week on Thursdays. This is a hint to get to Thursdays. Rabina said, "Fascism is the internalization of colonization." And I asked her the name earlier, and I think it's Aimé Césaire that said that. But that quote, when she said that, it really hit me. Fascism is the internalization of colonization. And to me, in my studies, I learned that colonization is simply defined eradication and elimination. So think of that. And there's a famous quote by a general, a colonialist general. His name was Richard Pratt. He started the Indian residential schools, and he says, And this really defines this idea of colonization. And I hope you can hear this in the fascism as well too. He says, "Kill every Indian, for there is no good Indian, so leave the man." And so that idea of the eradication and elimination of all the culture, of all the richness of who we are, all the somebody of our humanity, eliminate that and leave the man. Because they want it all for the resource. That is the project of colonization. They do that to the land, they do that to the humans, and they discard the humans and the land. And so fascism is the internalization of that process. And the fascism that is internalized by bodies that are in positions of domination take out that internalized aspect onto other people. And they continue to eradicate and eliminate. And so what Jesse Jackson is doing here by this I am somebody, and what Sojourner Truth did all the way to Bell Hooks and to Audre Lorde and to Bayard Rustin saying I am somebody, is they're saying not today fascism, not today colonization. I am somebody, I am human, and I am valid. The empire will try to rid us of our somebodyness. And so we need to stand strong to keep hope alive, as Reverend Jackson would say. And in this I am somebody, we learn that our suffering, it is it is there. It is something that we go through, but it does not define us. What has been done to us does not define us. The system's label does not define us. I will persevere through the fire. I will show character as my strength. I will keep hope alive. And I am somebody. We are somebody. And our power is unstoppable when we are together. I believe that's what Reverend Jesse Jackson would say today. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Matt. And I think I'm supposed to be joined by Robina.
My camera goes on and off, so I'm
Oh, okay. Oh,
here.
there she is. There you go. All right, Robina, do you want to?
Go ahead, Julius, while I struggle
All
with
right.
my camera.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt, for giving us an overview of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. It's a timely topic during this time. As you were listing off those revolutionaries, Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Bayard Rustin, Audre Lorde, Jesse Jackson, I was ticking off a list of my own. Sitting Bull, Tecumseh, Bolivar, Father Hidalgo, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, Gandhi, Lumumba, Nkrumah, Sankara, MLK, Malcolm X, just to name a few.
Yep. Yep.
And
No.
all of them, in their own way, in their own cultures, in their own, from where they were standing, they were inspiring their people in their time that they were somebody, that they were more than just colonial subjects and pawns on a chessboard or a checkerboard for the European powers to move around and grow, I don't know, coffee in Java, or to extract oil from in the Middle East, or for cotton in India. That no, you have a right as a human being to actualize your dreams for yourselves and use your resources for yourselves, and not just to export them to Europe for their enrichment. Um, Thank you for giving us a sketch of the arc of Reverend Jackson, both the good and the bad, both the strategic errors and the passion and foresight, the link with the people on the ground that really came across in your discussion here. That's however you feel about some of his tactical moves. He always had a passion for connecting with ordinary people, poor folk, disenfranchised people, the disabled, marginalized communities. That was his gift. He had a gift of connection. And also, thank you for pointing out that he was international in his perspective at a time where there was a lot of pressure post civil rights for major figures in the Black community to just focus on domestic issues and turn a blind eye to international issues. Um, Jesse Jackson, for that time, was probably refreshing in standing up for Palestinians, standing up to American imperialism by calling out the hypocrisy of U.S. foreign policy and daring to almost conduct his own foreign policy by going to negotiate directly with foreign leaders for the release of soldiers and hostages. Um, so that's what I had. I did want to comment on the music that we played earlier. It was fantastic. I was getting excited because the especially the Black audience members, there was a part of the music where they were just getting hyped. The musician was saying, "Lace up your boots, put on your backpack. It's time to ride." I mean, I was getting kind of so. Jesse Jackson had that. I don't know. It was a different. He came from a different era from the civil rights movement that came before. It was kind of like, no, we're standing 10 toes down on what's right because it is right, and we're not going to be pleading for our humanity. We're going to lace up our boots, put on a backpack, and let's ride. And given everything that's going on in the world right now, I'm just going to give a shout out to the Iranians. They're lacing up their boots, they're putting on their backpack, and they're riding. They're giving as much as they're getting. And thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you, Julius, but thank you, Matt. I really was looking forward to what you had to share because every time you have, I have learned and I have grown. And I especially want to acknowledge both you and Jacob in educating me in particular about disability rights. And so for me, this is always such a treat to be able to hear what you have to say. I loved the way that you reworded to make relevant Romans 5:3. And anytime anyone does that, they make it personal, which is what you were trying to do. I also am so glad to be here to keep learning Black history and not just the oppression, but how people dealt with it. And then once again, this is what you referred to. So I love the story of how Jesse Jackson built his presence and power and not didn't stop there, but how he used his position and power for and utilized it for good is what you said. And then you towards the end you said he may not have gotten the presidency, but he got the transformation, and you gave us the particular changes that happened within the Democratic Convention. It was always inspiring to listen to him, and I was there listening to both the 1984, as I think many of us were, and the 1988, and you came away with the main story that is told every day. And then here is another reality that is the suppressed reality that was presented. I also appreciated that you acknowledged that we are somebody because of the lineage that we have. And I loved that you ended with how we can reclaim all the richness of the somebodies that we are. So thank you. I so appreciate this. And I think we can open it up to questions.
Right out the gate, let's see Clint or Julia with
Yeah,
their
well,
hand
I'll
up.
start, and then Julia has one too. But Matt, when I just say, "Come on, man," I love when you share, bro. Hey, it's that juice, that energy. You know when you get to those points, you're like, well, hey, bro, I know what you're saying. I'm already there with you on the same page. When you was talking about Robina's Thursday statement about capitalism internalizing becomes fascism. You know what I mean? That moment too. I know Julius had the same reaction. That was such a well-spoken what that is what is happening. And here's the correlation for me. I'm in a recovery, okay, because I'm an addict. And there's an insanity that occurs in me that doesn't occur in the normal person. If they did a little bit of a substance, you know what? They would be like, okay, that was great or not great. Didn't matter. They would just go on about their life and never have to worry about it again. There's an insanity that happens when I do it, that my mind becomes obsessed with it. And it makes everything else unimportant. Okay, I understand that insanity. So here's the thing: watching colonialism like it's not insane in the first place, and what we're watching is that insanity. And so, like, what happened in a person in recovery is we do an inventory of ourselves, an honest inventory of ourselves, and we look at every nook and cranny, every defective character, because we want to see where we are at fault in the things we do in life. And so that's what is missing in what we're doing. All accountability, all ownership, and it's really gone to the far extreme with all of this anti-DEI, anti-wokeness. It's really going to the further extreme now. And we're watching those death throes of white supremacy and colonialism. And this is where our communities come together and realize that, like you said, we are somebody. We are somebody. Everybody here is better because we are together. You know what I mean? We are each individually somebody, but guess what? As a whole, we're so much more.
Yep.
And you're so important to me because you make me who I am today. And that's the important message we got to get. Robina, thank you for Thursday putting that in my head. You get those things rolling in my head with certain things you say about what are we doing intentionally. You know what I mean? To think about the solutions, not so much as the problem. There's a lot of problem out there today, but you know what? There's a lot of solution as well. Okay, go ahead, Julia.
Thank you, Clint. I just wanted to quickly say, Matt, that was great. I love your passion. Yeah. I just love listening to you. And I love what you brought to the table. I have to say, earlier this week, Miss Diane Fox, who I respect and love tremendously, she asked me, Julia, did you hear about the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson? And what do you know about him? Do you know about him? And I was like embarrassed to say I don't really know about him. You know what I mean? And I'm not using, like, I was young at the time, but as soon as I had that feeling, she asked me, do you know about him? My thought was, not only do I not know about him, but why don't I know about him? You know what I mean? What's that about? And you started your whole presentation with that. Like, why do I not know more about him? And Miss Diane Fox sent out something in the email that I read that linked me to that speech that you were talking about. I am somebody. As soon as I heard it, I was like, why did I not know about this man? Right? That was great. I had goosebumps. And then it's like, and so you're saying not only am I somebody, but I am somebody who understands.
Yeah.
Right? I am somebody who sees you. Right? So, and then the best part, the mic drop, was when you said, the presidency was a side gig.
Yeah, man. Hey, when I grow up, I want to be somebody. I didn't say I want to be a president. I want to be somebody.
Yeah, I hear that. The presidency, that's a side gig. The most important thing is that we reach as many people as we can, right? I understood that. So thank you so much for all that research you did kind of answered all the questions that I had. I wouldn't have known where to begin to learn those things. So thank you.
It's so important to in our political work, root ourselves into I am somebody. We got to feel that personal power to feel the power to, stand up to the political systems. And so, I don't hear that enough. We kind of always come up with our positions on things and our statements and the, slogans and things that sound good, but we don't often get back to the personal. So Reverend Jackson did to both hand.
Turning personal power to political power. What does I am somebody mean to you? Any hands out there? I'm looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott put in chat without Jackson, there's no Obama, and he said
Yep.
that he thinks that Jackson would have in many ways been a better president. I mean, I think in terms of values that's true, but I was wondering what you're thinking, Scott. You there?
There I am. Yeah, well, first of all, Jesse had a harder path, because I think the path was that um, Barack walked down was smoother. But there were things about, I can't help it right now with what's going on with our country in Iran and stuff. And what was in the back of my head was somehow Barack got taken in and had like 536 drone attacks he authored, and like which reached several thousand people who died, And somehow I got this feeling that Jesse was not going to go down. He was not going to become institutionalized. He wouldn't have been reelected because of that, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. So
Yeah, Scott, last week when I mentioned Reverend Jackson, you're saying what I'm thinking. He was a front runner for a while, but the Democratic Party sidelined him essentially in the way that Bernie Sanders was sidelined. And it's as though this capitalistic system is kind of immune to justice and to supporting the poor because, almost every politician, no matter what party, they talk about strengthening the middle class, but they don't talk about the poor.
Mhm.
Well, that's what Jesse talked about, right? And he was very international in his scope. So that's what I was thinking, that this, the same thing that happened to Bernie had already happened to Jesse. And Jesse was more radical than Bernie. So, but there wasn't enthusiasm for him. I see Marcy has her hand up, so I'm going to be quiet.
Marcy, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for the service. Thank you, Julia. That was beautiful, the way that you welcomed us in, as always. And just everything has felt so nice and warm. And then Matt, you're just off the hook. You just go off on so much. So my question is, what was the verse that you referenced when you began, and what was the revision that you provided to us?
Yeah, so it was Romans 5:3, where it says, rejoice in suffering, suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And so I said the rewording was um, rejoice while in suffering, period. Period. Or no, sorry, not rejoice. Have joy while in suffering. Or I think it said maintain your joy while in suffering, period. Perseverance builds character. And this character reminds us we are enough, for this is the hope that Jesus Christ has poured out for us. So it's kind of like a transformation process, if you will. Like the character is, we're here for the character. The perseverance, it's not about the suffering. It's a lot of times people use it as like the clobber passage of like, oh, suffer, just keep taking the beatings, like, and have joy while doing it. No, that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about.
This verse has always bummed me out. I'm not even gonna lie. And I even told my son one time, and my sons have read, they've read the word and stuff, and I'm like, I don't like that verse.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, oh, mom. But then he came down with the patriarchy, you're supposed to suffer in the joy because in the end, blah, blah. And I'm just like, no, this sounds like bullshit. So
No, I think because we got to align Jesus with the liberation side. This is anti-empire passage right here.
yes,
This is Romans, so like maintain your somebody, maintain your humanity. And the way we do that, even in the midst of suffering, you can have your joy even in suffering.
thank you.
And persevere and build that character, have that character, because that character is going to be the thing that's the middle finger to the empire. And so, and that is
Amen.
the hope. That is the hope of Jesus Christ, that we can maintain our character in the midst of empire, and that we are enough even in the midst of empire. And
Yes.
that's how
Yes.
fascism ends. We're not
Thank
ends.
you so much,
It
Matt. I
ends in
love
a much
that.
more complex way. But yeah, got you.
Where Barbara has a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, as Scott was speaking, and thank you so much, Matt. I really loved your talk, and I learned a lot. And I mean, I grew up hearing about Jesse Jackson my whole life, and I always would think like, oh my gosh, this guy doesn't give up. Like he just keeps trying. But I
He
just
believes
wanted
he
to
is somebody.
I just wanted to read this really quick quote by him that I just looked up that I thought
Yeah.
was so perfect for all of us. He said, I am not a perfect servant. I'm a public servant doing my best against the odds. As I
Hey, let's
develop and
go.
serve, be patient. God is not finished with me yet.
That's right.
And
That's
God
right.
was finished with Jesse Jackson. He's not finished with us yet. And he's
That's right.
super inspirational.
Yep. Yep. We got to feel it in our bones, waking up our bones.
Other thinkers. Oh,
I
Rosie?
took myself off of mute. I have to say that, wow, man, this is so beautiful, so beautiful. And I had the honor and the privilege of having marched literally hand in hand with Brother Reverend Jesse Jackson, presente. He met each of our children as they were babies. And Efrain and I were just so overjoyed at his, oh my God, huge impression of a man. Just so, wow, yeah, wow. um, Amazing, and yet so personable. We were young. We were young when we first met him. But yes, he rubbed my belly when I was pregnant with Joaquin as we marched hand in hand in Sacramento, California, the state capital, the March on Educational Rights. And yeah, when he first ran in 84, man, we were gung ho pushing,
Mm-hmm.
and people thought we were crazy. People thought we were crazy because we were young and we had already Jesus in tow with us as a little baby, but we were out there pushing. So I have such deep love, for my brother Jesse Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
God rest his soul. I know he's in heaven, and I know and I believe when I heard in the wee hours, I said, "Oh, easy, you were part of the welcoming committee." Presente, presente.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rosie.
Yeah.
Anna Rosa. Oh, did you want to say something, Matt?
Nope. I was just agreeing. Just saying, yeah.
All right. Anna Rosa.
Yeah, so I put it in the chat, and all the respect is definitely due for Jesse Jackson, but I also wanted to make sure people know that Shirley Chisholm ran for president back in 1972.
Yeah.
So before it happened to Bernie, before it happened to Jesse, it happened to Shirley. And a lot of times women do it before men, but they just don't get the attention for it. And I put in the chat a quote that she said, "When I ran for the Congress, when I ran for president, I met more discrimination as a woman than for being Black. Men are men." And just with everything going on with the Epstein files, I don't think people understand the level of rage that women are sitting with right now. So just wanted to give her due respect too.
Word. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a
Yeah, I was
word.
very careful to not say the first today because I had Shirley Chisholm in mind. But thank you for, I did not recognize her. So thank you for bringing her into the space.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, I don't know where it's playing. I think we saw it on Netflix,
I think it's on Amazon now.
Amazon. I think it's really worth the time to drop everything and watch Shirley Chisholm's story.
It was a great one. I'll say just to people, if you're inspired by this, William Barber, who goes online as Repairer of the Breach, also one of the main leaders of the poor people, or not a main leader, but he does Repairers of the Breach and is one of the leaders of the Poor People's Campaign, along with Liz Theo Harris. Very similar to this Rainbow Push Coalition that Reverend Jesse Jackson was building. The Rainbow Push Coalition was an addition of the original 1968 Poor People's Campaign. And so Dr. William Barber is picking that thread back up from the 1968 part. But if you're inspired by this, a very similar speech style, very similar message, centers impacted poor and low wealth people, anti-war, environmental justice, racial justice, economic justice, economic power. So Poor People's Campaign is a great one to look at. They have chapters all over the United States. So,
well, thank you, Matt Lowe. And we're going to have communion.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for everyone's contribution. Um, yeah, just like last week and to this morning, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, if I only knew these kind of things back then, um, because my mind, my being, my way of living was completely on another planet, if you will. I came, out from as an international student and just really enamored by the American way of life and so forth. And so politics and all that were not on my mind, least on my mind. And then 1988, that was a year I came around to Christianity and then later on, becoming pretty the typical evangelical Christian believer, focusing so much more on uh, clean morality, pureness, and all that. And so I remember one of the things that hampered my respect for Jesse Jackson at that time was that, as many of you might be familiar, his morality was brought into question. And so I was thinking, gosh, here we go again. Here is a candidate running, trying to be political up front, but then have all these baggages that he carries around. And so my respect for him was really crippled for a long time. But now, as I'm, peeling off all that garbage and really becoming free of that, I see what a treasure this person was, what a human being this man was. And I suppose, Julia, just like you, it's never too late. Never too late. We can learn and we can hop on. And that's what I'm doing. And I continue to learn. And one thing,
as we now transition into taking the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. And something that Robina highlighted from Matt's sharing today is that he may not have been elected as a president, but transformation came through his life. And immediately I thought about Christ. You know, he wasn't out there to become a king or to become a governor. People wanted to make him, but he knew his place. But he stayed steadfast to his mission, if you will. Yes, Jesse was running for, wanted a ticket to the White House. But what I wanted to focus is that both individuals, without a doubt, brought transformation to humanity. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. And we may not, be on television, or we may not be have the ticket for the DNC or the, or independent party, if you will. But each one of us, as we embrace this message of resistance, as we embrace the resistance to hegemony, white supremacy, empire, and I want to encourage us to recommit our lives to that, to present our lives, as it says, sacrifice, living, righteous, holy before the divine. Let us join with Jesse, with Jesse Jackson. Let us join with the Christ and saying, yes, as we take this element, I want to recommit myself to that. And whatever I'm able to do, each one of us, I want to contribute. And globally, together, as a living organism, we can bring transformation.